Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. And Professor Sunrise Productions! Hello class, Professor Sunrise here. In today's class, we're taking a look at the state of the current format, my problems with it, the role dragons play in it, and also the foreseeable future of this channel's content, at least for roundabout nationals. So, without further ado, I would really appreciate you if you could seal pass on that subscribe button, leave some feedback down in the comment section below as usual, and let's get right into the video. By the way, this will be the first time I will just be talking into the camera. I got my notes down on the monitor, so I'll be excused, hopefully, for you guys if I just look at the monitor a few times in this video to just not lose too much off the track and of freestyling. Anyways, let's get into the video. So we will be taking a look at the format, of course, and before we do that, we have to define the format, and currently that's mostly Kashtira, Super Heavy Samurais, purely branded in lab. I hopefully can get some pie charts from other nationals around Europe, which happen, and there's like a huge trend of Kashtira and Super Heavy Samurais. In some regions there's more branded, there's lab running around to counter set decks, and then there's purely also being a really huge trend here, at least for a lot of the pro teams here in Germany. A lot of them are on purely, so I expect a lot of that. And as you can see, especially if you consider the point of view of dragons, two of those matchups are favorably at best. Branded is really easy for dragons, and then there is a Labyrinth, which at least the very floodgate heavy, trap heavy variant was quite easy to deal with for dragons. The more appliance version, I don't know what to call them, with the small guys and setting up a lot of traps, it's a little harder to deal with because it's a little more sacky, a little more all-inny, and it's a little harder to deal with it, at least for my experience. I only played against it a few times, but for some reason, whatever, it is harder, even though they do have dark monsters in the graveyard which try to get back into the hand, and we can just chain our pistols to that. It still is a little harder, but then again, I only had a few games with it. And then the rest of the three matchups are basically unwinnable, at least like if you both draw equally good, it is unwinnable in most cases. Compare that to last format, where you had 4 out of the 5 top decks were basically free wins for you. You had Mathmech, you had Branded, you had Trap Heavy Labyrinth variant, and you had Runic Life Twin. And out of 3 of those, resolving 1 Magnamut against everything but Labyrinth was basically a free win already, because you would just disrupt the opponent so much and you would get so much value off that 1 Magnamut. It was absurd. And then you had only Kashtira, which was really hard as a matchup, but because a lot of people, for whatever reason, were not really on D-Shifter, the matchup was bearable. Like, a lot of people were not on D-Shifter in the main deck, at least what I noticed on Tuning Book, on regionals and bigger tournaments here in Germany. So that made the matchups a little more bearable. So with matchups becoming way less favorable, I noticed that Dragon Link, I just couldn't really keep up with that, even though like favorable matchups could be salvaged with like non-engine. The even bigger problem I had with the deck is just the power creep and the non-engine people were playing. Of course, I already talked a lot about the non-engine people are playing, but I think the power creep and the non-engine, they go hand by hand. So I really just wanted to keep talking about it in this video. The power creep with Super Heavy Samurais is just insane. Just comparing deck builds of Super Heavy Samurais and Dragons just shows you that Super Heavy Samurai can easily play up to 18 non-engine slots while having insane 12 one-card starters with end on like 2 Omni Negates plus Appaloosa plus follow-up of just 1 card. Of course, the non-engine that they can play is a little weaker. They cannot play Talents, which is insane right now. They cannot play like really floodgatey cards. They cannot side like Skill Drain. I mean, they could theoretically side Floodgates, but it's just not as clean in that deck. So there is like a little downside on that. But other than that, the deck is just completely insane. And it has something very similar with Dragon, is that it is a combo deck which has a very easy time to adapt to the format and adapt to the game state and go for a very mid-rangey approach. Think about Baguska Pass, think about Barone Appaloosa Pass with like 3 hand traps, whatever. These are boards which you will never be able to break and kill the opponent at the same time. And then just having a lot of follow-up for the crackback and then just killing the opponent in turn 3, which is something which Dragons can of course do as well, like going from like full-on Boral and Savage, Disparta, whatever boards with Branded Beast to just seal pass with a few hand traps in the hand. This is a very similar approach, but Super Heavy Samurai just does it way, 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 way better. Just because of how many non-engine slots it can play and how many one-card starters it has. So in my opinion, it just didn't really make sense to play Dragons if there's a deck in Super Heavy Samurai which does everything that Dragons does, but just better, apart from maybe 1 or 2 things which I will get to later. The last aspect, which of course really hurts Dragons right now, and I feel like I'm a broken record, is of course the non-engine people are playing. Droll is in basically every main deck, apart from maybe Kashtira, which sometimes sided. And it just hurts the deck. Of course, we can play around it by going for like a mid-rangey approach and go like Seal, Branded Beast, Pass, which is fine in a certain scenario, but Super Heavy Samurai just does it better because they, like I said again, play more non-engine. So they go Bagooska, a lot of non-engine paths. Bagooska is way better into Kashtira. Bagooska is way better into Purely. Where Seal is like decent against Purely, but basically does nothing against Kashtira. So just have a better matchup into the meta and playing into the meta's problem being Droll. But then there's also, of course, Shifter, but we don't have to talk about that. Every deck loses to basically Shifter. But most importantly, there's Ogre. So while we can adapt our game plan to play around Droll by going for this very heavy Seal Pass approach with Branded Beast and Branded Regained, Ogre just really hurts all of these. They can hit a Branded Beast in the end phase when it tries to get Branded Regained onto the board, and we basically neck 2 of that. It is insane. Of course, because we already played into it and like maybe committed a little more than we would have liked to get a Serenity into the graveyard, stuff like that. We cannot resolve our boot sector a lot of times, which most of the time, or at least sometimes, will be the way into Bystial Disparter, into Baronne, to break apart boards. So overall, it's really hard to play against Droll, Ogre, and Shifter at the same time, especially if you consider that there's a deck which basically fills our niche and has a way easier time to play into all of those just because it is more consistent, has more non-engine, and probably plays less bricks, though I'm not 100% sure about that. Just Ogre hitting our answer to the format by gluing our deck down to Seal, Branded Beast, Pass, and putting as much non-engine as possible into it is just like the nail in the coffin for Dragons, in my opinion, in the current format. And with all of those things combined, it looks very bad, in my opinion, to play Dragons at the moment. I don't think it gives you any competitive edge at the moment at all, unlike in last format, where it was, in my opinion, the best meta call you could have done. It was just insane into basically everything, and if you wanted to play Rogue, like Dragons was just the best bet, in my opinion. The only saving grace that Dragons has right now is the ability to cheese out very strong towers in the form of Chaos Angel and Boral End, where a lot of the decks have a really hard time dealing with it. But because people are playing Kaijus, you don't really have the ability to do so turn 1 because you will just get Kaiju then. So there are things which you have to go into like in turn 3, in turn 4, when there's already established game plan, which is very hard to do so because the non-engine is so hostile towards you and the game is so sacky currently, where you just cannot really get into those games. Being able to main deck Droll, or being forced to main deck Droll even, also hurts your Magnamhut grind game, because if you get Droll and then you have a Droll on your own, normally this is a very good sign. You can just trade Drolls and then you can play, but the problem is our deck heavily relies on resolving Magnamhut in the opponent's turn, and if we get Drolled in our own turn, and then we resolve Magnamhut in the opponent's turn, but we also had to draw them, we only have the graveyard available to us. And because we got Drolled first turn, our graveyard probably is not looking too good, greatly hindering our turn 3 power play. And it just turns the deck into like this really weird mash, which is just the worst version of Super Heavy Samurais. It does have the ability to play Talons and Towers, and that's basically it. But because everyone is on Purely, you cannot really rely on those towers, even though Kashtira doesn't really have an out for Borderland apart from Scareclaw. And Super Heavy Samurais basically has no out against Borderland, just because we can just negate the Genius, so they have to hard draw a Kaiju. Overall, it just doesn't really look good for me with Dragons at the moment. And even if you adapt completely to the format, like I said, Super Heavy Samurais just completely outmatched it. If you take a look at my current build of Dragons, it had 11 non-engine slots, and I was like so happy that I could fit them in. And Super Heavy Samurai easily goes for 18, sometimes even up to 20, depending on the build. And it's just unreal. It's very hard to keep up with those numbers. And this also just neatly ties down to my biggest problem with the format I have right now. If you take into consideration, yeah, we do have that niche with the Boral End, with the Chaos Angel, all of those towers can be really good, but they can just get Kaiju'd. This is just the sack format like it has ever been. What non-engine is way too good right now. It's basically king. Droll and Shifter against Super Heavy Samurais, Kaijus against Purely, Talons in a Kashtira mirror, Nibiru if you go full combo with Kashtira, Kaiju if you go a Rise Hard Path as Kashtira. All of those things can turn into a basically auto win if you don't draw the non-engine yourself to counter the opponent's blowout, and the format just feels very sacky, and it's just very not fun in my opinion currently, which is the first time I actually had like very little fun in the format. Is actually this format. Of course, I complained a little bit about Tier Elements format, but that was mostly because I grew tired of it. But this format, it feels very fast-paced, very sacky. If you drew like starter, extender, and then 2 non-engine blowouts, you basically win the game, because even if your opponent blows you out, you still have that follow-up for next turn. You give your opponent the shifter, the draw, whatever, they cannot play whatsoever, and then you just win in turn 3, unless they have another blowout hand plus another starter to play in turn 4 or something like that. So just very, you just compare your hands and you basically know already who wins, because there's very little skill expression currently in the game. Of course, there's still some, and you will still lose some games because you misplay, but overall, the format just feels very sacky and very unfun to play. And in a very sacky format where non-engine is king, playing basically a version of a worse deck, in this case it's Dragons being a worse version of Super Heavy Samurais, just is not a competitive call I am willing to make. And this is also where this video will be dealing with the future, or at least the immediate future with this channel, because maybe a few of you have already seen it on Dueling Book. I've been testing a lot of Kashtira, and I actually have the deck here in full. I mean, it looks beautiful. And I will be attending nationals this season, like 99% with Kashtira. And I'm asking you guys, do you want to see some Kashtira content on this channel? Maybe my approach to the deck, like my experience I did with it, my deck build, why I'm building it like that. Of course, I'm very new to this deck. I still do a few misplays here and there. I'm definitely nowhere near mastered it. But if you want to be part of that journey, maybe I can do a few videos of it here and there. Of course, it will also be really good for you Dragon enjoyers out there. I'm still one of you. Don't forget that. To just know your enemy, right? If you have a very good understanding of Kashtira, it will definitely help you play our still worst matchup in the format, being Kashtira. So all of you Dragon enjoyers out there, you could definitely get some knowledge out of that. If you're not interested in that, definitely let me know. I'm also willing to still do some Dragon content, of course. I will probably needing like 1.5 weeks until I'm very confident with Kashtira, where I'm willing to sacrifice my time testing on Dueling Book, playing Dragons again just for fun, so that I can still give you guys some nice content. Or do you guys want more general content like this, without even taking into consideration Dragons, just going for like meta analysis, what the best hand trips are, tier lists of what I think are the best decks, etc, etc. Just let me know what you guys want to see, basically until Nationals on this channel. In the comment section down below, because after Nationals I will probably go back to Dragons and play at Euros, hopefully. I do have the invite, of course, and I will be playing Dragons just for the love. I just want to top Nationals, and afterwards I will be playing Dragons again. I will be the Rogue Warrior you all love again. And that's basically it for the video. Like I said, definitely let me know your thoughts on in the comment section down below of what you guys want to see on this channel in the future, and definitely let me know your thoughts about Dragons in the current format. Do you still have success? Do you still think it's a very good competitive pick for a very big tournament? Of course, in Dueling Book on locals, everything will be fine with Dragons. It's still a very solid deck if you play it correctly, but on a competitive stage, I don't think it will give me any edge over the opponent I had in the past, and it's just, in my opinion, a hindrance. Even though there was one guy topping a region, not a regional, national, in I don't know which country with Dragons, it's just one guy, and it shows you that, of course, there will be one guy topping with it, but it's probably not a good case to play it. And it's not something you will be topping because of. You can top with Dragons, but you won't be topping because you play Dragons, if that makes sense. So, without further ado, class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave. Professor Sunrise out. Peace.